Počujete ma aj vzadu, keď takto? Ďakujem, že ste všetci došli dneska večer. Moje meno je Jano Kohút, ja som s pani doktorkou Friederike Meckel Fischer, teda našim hlavným hosťom dnešný večera. Ďakujem, že ste... Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Yes, pleasure. My sme sa stretli v Zürichu, kde pracujem a kde som bol na jej session s holotropným dýchaním, s ktorým už tiež teraz skončila. Ona má výcvik aj certifikované od Stanislava Grofa, a teda v transpersonálnej psychológii holotropnom dýchaní. A jej záujem teraz je viac sa sústrediť, už prestala aj s holotropným dýchaním, s psycholytickou terapiou očividne tiež, od 2009. A jej záujem teraz hlavne sprostredkovávať ľuďom, publiku ako vám, svoje skúsenosti, ktoré nazbierala počas tých rokov, ktoré robila túto formu terapie. A napísala o tom knihu, teraz pomerne čerstvú, tam sú možno ešte nejaké výtlačky. A hlavné, čo tento večer by mal sprostredkovať, je v prvom rade žiadnu propagáciu substancií hlava, nehlava, ale je to v podstate o vyslovene... Pardon? A je to o tom, že o tej terapii, psycholytickej terapii, tak ako ju robila Friederike. Takže ešte raz ďakujem, Friederike, ďakujem, že si došla.
Yeah. May I ask you, what language do you prefer? Who wants to hear me in English? And who wants to hear me in German? So, I speak English.
Je tam niekto, kto by mal problém s iba angličtinou? Mohli by sme, že by ste sem došli pre nás a by sme sa to nejak snažili prekladať na to? Akože simultánne?
That I keep on talking English and maybe Jan translates right along. Not too loud, please. Not too loud. I think we have questions afterwards, right?
Yes.
Yeah. If it's very urgent, you say, don't stop. Okay. Could we switch off the lights here so that I can have the... Can you see this? This is an eye. So, good evening. Many thanks for coming and many thanks for being interested in this wonderful subject of matter.
Počujete dobre vzadu? Áno, dobre.
Everything okay?
Okay.
Okay. Now, I'm really very happy that so many people have come here, and young people, and the atmosphere is just wonderful. So, I'm very glad to present you psycholytic therapy to you today, but I have to point out that I'm not presenting the psycholytic therapy as such, but my very own personal approach as it has developed over the years. You may have heard that I have worked underground in psycholytic therapy for more than 10 years. So it is my very own approach, which I am happy to present to you. Naturally, it has lots in common with other ways of doing it, but at least I will talk to you about this. Naturally, the big thing comes first. I want to emphasize that I do not call for any old use of any old substance today. I do not tell you to offer psycholytic therapy to any clients or to build groups and to do things this. This is very important for me because this is forbidden to me. So, what I will present you today are results. I found these things empirically and I put them together. Underneath these results are processes, and these processes were very lively. You know, we laughed and we cried our head off, and it was a turmoil in the room, or it was very silent, but it was very vivid. And these findings and results I present you today, they are vivid and alive. Now, so this is the disclaimer. Now, how did I get myself to psycholytic therapy? Well, as you see me here, I'm born in 47. That means I'm 70 years old next year. And as you see, this was how Germany looked when I was born. So my life was under the motto, hedges tight. Is this to understand? You know, when you have a boat, you put all the looks tight. You don't feel. You just function. You work. You achieve. And my mother's finger in the air. You ought to have a better life than ours. So this was exactly what brought me into a personal and professional crisis in the late 80s. I was already married for 20 years and I worked in a clinic as an intern. And sure enough, first thing I did when I fell into this crisis, I started to become a psychotherapist, thinking that would help. So I went through an odyssey of therapeutical approaches, very different one, transpersonal, systemic, hypnosis. I did practically everything. Finally, I ended up myself in a psycholytic therapy. And I have to tell you that at that time there was in Switzerland a very small gap where it was legal to use MDMA and LSD for 7 psychiatrists in Switzerland, and one of them happened to offer an education in this. So I belonged to the few lucky ones to have taken this education. So I landed in psycholytic therapy myself as a trainee and a client at the same time. So for me, psycholytic therapy was my way to detect. It took naturally not only this education, but it took almost 20 years to detect my childhood traumata, to resolve them. And for me, the psycholytic way was like the key to a second life. In the years that followed, this psycholytical approach, when the developing of the setting went hand in hand with my very own personal development, naturally the base was laid in the training I had from 92 to 95. The abrupt end of my psycholytic work in October 2009 by betrayal and the following criminal trial allows me today to stand up here and talk to you about my work. I really would like to tell you first that I was acquitted guilty, is the word right? Acquitted guilty of violating the Swiss narcotics law in respect to LSD. And I got 16 months of prison on probation. and I was acquitted free of charge in relation to the therapy, because I could prove that I had done it in a controlled setting, and I did not harm anybody. So actually, I'm standing here by mercy of betrayal. See, this is how things can go. In the cup of mercy there is a drop of bitterness, because I cannot travel into the United States anymore. I expect now that some of you are here who are very acquainted with psychoactive substances. Maybe some of you have no idea. Maybe some are friends of psycholytic therapy and would like to learn it when it's finally become legal or somehow, or others who are very skeptic. So, but I hope, really do hope, that in the end of this evening you all will have answers to the following 4 questions. What is psycholytic therapy? Why psycholytic therapy and not only conventional therapy? How do we do psycholytic therapy and what can come out of it? And finally, very short, where do we go from here? Before I go on, I will tell you the following. Whenever I use the expression client, I refer to it as he. Naturally, it is meant she, and I think the King's English is then to say there, but this was too difficult for me, so I say client and he. And I do sometimes mixed times. So please understand, if I say we do it like this, then I should say we did it like this. Or, you know, so I use the time, and when I prepared this talk, naturally I asked my lawyer, and he said, beware of the time. So this I do here now, because he had to read this so that I don't offend anything, or, you know, one never knows. I will rather spread the word than get in new trouble. Now, what is psycholytic therapy? Well, first, I haven't invented it. There are the ex-champions, the old fathers behind me, big names like Albert Hoffmann, Stanislav Grof, Ralph Metzner. Stanislav Grof and Ralph Metzner were my very honored teacher, and Stolarov, and big names, and they are great guys who are in research now, and who are the ones to come. So I feel perfectly well with people in front of me and people behind me. Now, task, goal, and intention of analytical therapy and that psychology, and that's where I come from, is to make unconscious material conscious, so that we can re-experience it, work through it, and then finally integrate it. And this is the same in psycholytic therapy as in normal, conventional psychotherapy. Well, why would we want that? The psychic material that is stored in the unconscious cannot be remembered, and therefore it cannot be verbalized. Yet it is exactly that material what primarily determines perception, the interpretation of this perception, and the actions that follow out of this process. And the unconscious determines and shapes concepts of oneself and the world. Physical, mental, and emotional experiences are stored generally in coherent tracks to be memorized. By contrast, traumatic or experiences too heavy are not stored coherently but fragmented. And on top of things, by special mechanisms of mechanisms of storing, the brain makes sure that in order to protect the individual, this material cannot be remembered. Neither can the sensations and the feelings and everything. It's gone. It's all, one is here, one is there, and all the person ends is in a dissociated state of being. So, but this imprinted material emerges somehow disguised again as stress responses to certain stimuli. And this, in a way, then, is a solution or a try of a solution of the unconscious. So, and this, then, this is by then what we call a symptom, what comes up there. So these things sometimes present themselves in the outside as the answers, only as psychosomatics. That's one way. Then another way is that they show up, these solutions or these underlying questions or problems. They show up as unspecific state of beings where people just don't feel uneasy in certain situation, or they dissociate, or they whatever, mostly they drink then. And very often they show up as incomprehensible, strange reactions to certain triggers. And these reactions are out of proportion to what has happened. They are rigid. They are all of a sudden. And they are especially resistant to therapy because they come up and no idea where they come from. Well, and this is exactly what we call symptom. Is the group bigger? It's still, are you getting along? Okay. Yeah, is it? Okay, good.
We are talking about
sure.
weather.
Okay. Well, we were about to that these are called symptoms, and you can guess 3 times where these symptoms show up. These symptoms typically show up in relationships. Where else? And
where else?
Where else? Where else than in relationships? There we have these symptoms, and so in this way, the solution of former times becomes the problem of now. And this is why we want to detect them. So long. With these type of symptoms, a person comes to a therapist. And the moment a person comes to a therapist, this person becomes a client. So the client is distressed, he is suffering, and when he comes to the therapist, he hopefully has an intention for himself and a task for the therapist. And the therapist hopefully has a method, a therapy method, and in this way, tools to do the job. And between these two, then interactively, therapy starts and takes place. And if you add now a psychoactive substance to this therapy, then we start talking about psycholytic therapy. Of course, the conventional psychotherapeutic approach is continuing while we do the psychotherapy, the psycholytic therapy, because in psycholytic therapy you meet like every 2 months. This makes 6 times a year, and this is not so very often, so you have sessions in between. All right. Now, which substances did I use? I used MDMA and LSD, and I used a combination of the two. I gave 2CB and psilocybin, but today I will only talk about the MDMA and the LSD. It would take forever if I would go into every substance. Well, both MDMA and LSD have in common that they both come from psychotherapy. They both do not have any have any intrinsic pharmacological effects of their own. They both have been proven not to be addictive, and they both have been proven to be safe. With the MDMA, you have to know a few details concerning medication or concerning certain illnesses. Both have a choreographic curve of unfolding. They both start with the flooding in of the substance, when the substance is unfolding its effect in the body. This in psycholytic therapy we call the ascent, and it takes about 90 minutes and it ends with a peak where the substance has reached its full effectiveness. This is the same in MDMA and LSD. Both then have a phase of time where the full effect is to be felt, and this is what we call the plateau phase. And this naturally is very different. LSD has much longer a plateau phase than the MDMA. And by the way, for 20 years ago, the MDMA took 8 hours. Nowadays, it takes something like 3 or 4 hours. I don't know what has happened. It was not me. So, then both have a phase of the diminishing effect, which in psycholytic therapy we call the descent, and which is somewhat according, like when you have ayahuasca or other substances, then you don't have this long diminishing effect. It's more like, and then it's gone, and the mushroom too. But the MDMA relatively long, but the longest naturally has the LSD. Now, both substances have the effect of opening up consciousness, and both only show what is within you, both. So there is not the hell in the blotter or the drop, nor is heaven in the capsule of MDMA. So let me talk about MDMA and how it works. The effect of MDMA is the most important effect of the MDMA is to reduce anxiety or to even take it away for quite a while. MDMA gives a very good relaxation to the body. So what we have then is a psychophysical relaxation. MDMA reduces resistance to upcoming material from the unconscious. Not totally flat, but it reduces it quite a bit. And the psychophysical relaxation together with this reduced resistance allows the client to look at any sort of difficult material without instantly being overwhelmed by the emotions that are connected or that come up with this memory. So this is, as a matter of fact, why it is so wonderful in traumatized people. They can remember first and look at it. MDMA raises the client's capacity for introspection. It raises openness. It raises the ability to interact socially, and it raises the willingness to communicate. MDMA activates the ability to feel. And combined with freedom of anxiety, so the capacity to really feel deep and the freedom of anxiety leads to this, what is generally called in MDMA, the state of love. So please believe this. If there is a little bit fear or anxiety left on an MDMA session, you will not feel love. It's, by the way, it's all written in the Bible, at Johannes someplace, John, where there is fear, there is no love. And believe me, you can be in a state of exactly this love, when without any substance, you are totally free of fear. So then you are in a state of love. Now, during an MDMA session, belief sentences, insights come out of a very depth source of you, and these insights are very convincing. And they are very true, and they can be concerning things out of your life, or philosophical ideas, or insights about something biographical, or even out of your profession. So wherever it comes. These these sentences can be very well remembered. So this shows that the cognitive ability is always kept, so you can steer the process perfectly yourself all the time. What I call the self-reflecting I, not the I, but the me. So the self-reflecting I, or the observer, can remains during a whole MDMA session.
Can you repeat the last phrases about like that?
The self-reflecting I?
Yeah, the sentences.
Oh, out of the depth, out of your inner sources come sentences which are very convincing, like insights, you know. Oh, you can even, I once had, God is everywhere, you know. Okay. So sentences like this.
So it's not like the sentences of your parents, like you beg.
No. Insights where you gain, like you haven't understood something, and all of a sudden you say, like, you know? Yeah, you got it? Very good. Go on. Yeah. The LSD produces a whole range of different phenomena, which are really not to be generalized. You know, I personally think that they are psychological. When you read the, what is the Beipackzettel?
The instruction of the factory.
When you read the instruction of the factory of LSD, then you have there 50 things, you know. And Stan Grof writes, by the way, in his book, that he has seen thousands of people on LSD, and none of them had the same. So it's totally different, and in my opinion, it depends on the person what you have. What is important that LSD lowers or reduces the resistance towards upcoming material as well. Some people do have pseudo hallucinations, though what I think in the ayahuasca you call it visions and so on. I don't have this, so maybe you have it. It's not very typical, and if you remind me, I tell you something about this later, but not now, because then I get lost in my talk. So the content of the experiences are very much dose dependent. So very low dosed, like up to 75 micrograms, you can really tackle on annoying things out of your everyday life. So if you ever want to really get annoyed about something, then you take just a little LSD, so that you don't really have the feeling you are on, but then you can really see the mess you make in the house, and that you don't clean up and all this sort of thing. With a middle high dose, you can look through patterns very easily, behavior patterns, patterns of relationship, patterns in your family, and repressed memories can come up too. A high dose, like up to 500 micrograms, allows many mystical experiences and philosophical insights of grandiosity, I tell you. But traumata can come up, conflict-laden material can come up, so you really have to be prepared for this. experienced clients can even get into their dissociated places, but then they have to know that they are in the dissociated place, because that's the place where people would say, oh, nothing happens, nothing happens, just dull, Then beware, it might be a dissociative place. LSD has an impact on the thought process. So the ability to concentrate on outer things is lower, diminished, whereas the inner awareness and the inner introspectiveness is really very well increased. So when you look at the flow of someone taking LSD regularly, then after a while he will be, the more he learns, which I will explain to you later, the better he will learn to be on a high dose LSD and even concentrate on the outer things if necessary. So the experience in LSD are often so vivid that the person thinks that they are happening right now. And these states is generally both physically and mentally stressful and irritating. So if a person is unaccompanied, and if a person does not know yet or has forgotten that he only looks at his very own insides, he can either be re-traumatized or he can enter this what you commonly call a bad trip. So please note that not only people like clients, but no man ever should be alone on a high dose of LSD. It's interesting to do, but please have someone with you. The founding fathers of psycholytic therapy, Albert Hofmann, Stan Grof, Ralph Metzner, they give the following definition. The substances are catalysts. They are non-specific awareness amplifiers of the inner and the outer. They lead to transformation through self-knowledge. They are the gateway to the unconscious. We can use psychoactive substances to uncover psychic material that is stored in the unconscious and integrate it. Very much following Stan Grof, I use the substances as a means of expanding the radius of inner perception. We have used them like a telescope to look into other dimensions, and like a microscope to look into our deep inner self. So for me, I define psycholytic therapy as psychotherapy assisted by a psychoactive substance to support the process of becoming aware and integrating recallable and especially non-recallable memory content. A very, 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 very few words to the risk.
Pardon?
Very few words to the risk, not the side effects, the risk. I have worked over 10 years with psychoactive substance, and I've accompanied about 96 to 100 people on a longer process. And we have not had one incident in all these years. So for me, they worked safely. And I say this on the basis of the drug ranking from Professor Nutt that you might have heard about, and on the other hand, of the many, many studies that are going on worldwide at the time being. And all these studies now have proven these substances, LSD, MDMA, psilocybin, to be safe, and they're now working on how they really can be used in therapy. So there is the call to educate youngsters or young doctors, psychologists, in how to use these substances in therapy. Naturally, one has to prepare if these things ever get safe, get legal again. So now it is about the qualitative evidence of their effectiveness in therapy. So for me, the risks of psycholytic therapy are just the same as in normal psychotherapy. So there we can naturally argue if the task of therapy is to change things, then for many people the risks of therapy is change. So, but we can discuss that. Now, the second question. Why psycholytic therapy and not only conventional therapy? The substances I talk about make it possible to bring unconscious material to consciousness. So that's the reason. If someone got very, very badly stuck in therapy with me, and he had tried other methods too, like the holotropic breath work, the family constellation, hypnosis, whatever, and if he really wanted to discover either the trauma he knew of, or get a connection to the trauma, or get rid of his dissociative states, or if he really wanted to change damaging patterns, then this would be reason enough for me to propose this method to him, and then he could read, or naturally in the early times there was nothing to read. I would tell him, and then he could agree, or he could say, no, this is too hot for me. So he could decide, but it was a reason enough to offer it to him. Naturally, this mostly was in the course of a therapy, but sometimes I suggested it spontaneously when I had the feeling that that we could not possibly reach the reason for the symptom. I recall there one young lady. She came to me. I think I was the fifth or the sixth therapist. And she was 35, she was still wetting the bed, especially when she had a partner. Naturally, this had brought many a relationship to break. So there she was, and she started pretty soon after we met, and it took 2 years until she discovered in a row of sessions that she had witnessed the abuse of her elder sister by a relatively old man as a babysitter. And since the two sisters were sleeping in the same bed, she had the wonderful idea of putting diapers around her so that it wasn't her turn. And she had forgotten that. She had done this at the age of 5. It had happened between the age of 5 and 6.5. And then she had forgotten it. And she had one picture. Finally, we dug and we made, and we had one picture as she was sort of hiding, and she finally saw the shadow of this man, and then all of a sudden the memory came back. So I'm very glad we took all the time, because naturally, maybe you are psychologists or therapists among here, one naturally thinks of an abuse and would not think of having watched an abuse, So, and I'm very glad we did this.
Could you please repeat the sentence, the last sentence?
We were very happy that we hadn't imposed that this was an abuse, because it wasn't. She had watched an abuse,
Okay.
This was the interesting thing about it.
Thank you.
But it would have never brought anything if I had taken her for 2 more years into normal therapy. I was falling asleep while we were working. So, but I'm did I mix up something? I mixed up something, right? No? Yeah, so there we go. So I'm not saying that everyone now must go to psycholytic therapy. Ich bin wieder in der Reihe. Neither am I saying that other therapies don't work. All I'm saying is, when I started out with psycholytic therapy, especially on my own person, we did not have the expression post-traumatic stress disorder yet. The word trauma, the word dissociation was unknown, far away from therapy, you know. As I said, I'm of 47, and in my generation, no one would have had the idea that the symptoms, when I was 40 or 45, no one had the idea that these symptoms were post-war symptoms or the war symptoms of my mother and my late father, you know, no idea. So for me, this was the answer to my questions. I don't know if I would do it nowadays the same way, because we have very well-functioning trauma therapy. But still, for the heavy cases, it is really. So, once again, why psycholytic therapy? I put it in one sentence. With the psychoactive substance, we can fulfill the task of depth psychology and psychoanalysis, and we can help people. Naturally, psycholytic therapy is not for everyone, and it is not a cure-all. There are indications and there are contraindications. So for whom is psycholytic therapy not suited? It is not suited for psychotic people. It is not suited for people with severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia. It is not suited for highly depressed suicidal people. I am not sure whether it will stay that way, that it is not suited for people with severe personality disorders. I am doubting about this. For me, I would not take a borderline patient, but maybe others dare. I would not. But it is suitable for the normal neurosis. It is suitable for traumatized people. And I think it's suitable for people who want to become more self-aware. It doesn't have to be therapy, but it could be a way of healing in another way, from the normal person to the authentic personality, for example. Now, number 3. How did I do psycholytic therapy, and what can come out of it? Let me have a sip of water, please. The substance, client, and therapist form a triangular relationship, which in psycholytic therapy is called the triad of substance, parenthesis, or dose, set, and setting. Compliance with the criteria contained within this triad determines the success or failure of a psycholytic session. The important thing with a substance is to administer the right amount. Of course, there are guidelines, but this is now about the fine-tuning, the real fine-tuning. To work it out, you have to have personal experience with a substance. You have to know how the client has gotten along with it so far. You have to know what the intention of the client is. And you then have to later on put the dosage together transparently with the client himself. You know, then after a while they would say, you know, the last time was a little bit too much, or give me this time a little more, I want to look closer, and so on. So they determine the fine-tuning. Beginners with MDMA, naturally I'm still with the MDMA. Beginners, I have given 90 milligrams to 110 milligrams. And advanced people, I have given 100 up to 130. There are people who use the standard dosage, and others say that you can dose by body weight. Well, if you look at me, and if I would have taken a dosage by body weight, I would never have gotten enough, because I'm a flyweight, and I would have gotten like a little bit more than half a dosage. So I prefer the standard dosage. And I was afraid sometimes, I once had a guy, I think he was 110 kilos, and that if I then would have thought about dosing him by kilogram body weight, I would have been scared, so that's what I did. With LSD, I started out as an adjunct to MDMA. So I first started with MDMA, and then I added a tiny little bit, sometimes less than 50 micrograms, to a dosage of MDMA, so that it would sort of lengthen the process a little. You can hardly feel it when you're on MDMA. Take a tiny little bit of L, and then lengthen the process and make it a little bit clearer in the head. The all too sweet then is gone, of the LSD. And sometimes naturally vice versa, but I'm now at the dosage of LSD. So I started the LSD, pardon?
You would do it at the same time?
Yes. We did, since we were sort of researchers, we sometimes did it at the same time. Sometimes we took first the M, and then after 90 minutes or 100 like this, we would add the next substance. It depended on how we had intended the peak, Good question. So the LSD I gradually dosed up. I started out with 70 as the adjunct, as I said, then with 75, 100, and naturally one always have to have in mind what is the intention of the client, and one has to consider that even under the influence of psychoactive substance, LSD and MDMA and 2CB, the client starts building up a new way of resistance. So the unconscious doesn't open up so totally. After a while, they can repress under MDMA. So one really has to sort of take them by surprise, You don't give them 3 times in a row MDMA, then they have built up the resistance already. So you say, oh yes, today we do LSD, then, ooh, then they... Now, the second in this triangle is the set. The set actually is the client. To the set, everything belongs that makes him what he is, from his procreation to the very day, including the choice of his car. As the client has to have an intention question. And it is the goal of the client to respect the setting, to really commit himself to his very process, and to really respect the therapist, and then we have the circle. The third one in this, the third element of the triad is the setting, which is actually the therapist. And as everything that belongs to him is the same, and the setting then includes the therapeutical compound. So he has to have a method, and he has to know what he's doing, and so on. He has the obligation to take care of the whole framework. This includes the room, the invitation, the room, the preparation, whatever. The task of the setting 2 is to guide and to give a clear idea to the client, to the set, that he is safe all the time. It's one of the most important things, that the client feels safe. Because if there is fear, there is absolutely no opening. these three elements interact like in a mobile. You know what you hang over a baby's thing that he can watch. So if the mobile is in balance, then the substance is right, the set is right, and the setting is right, and then the three float, and they can interact and have a very good session. If one of them is disturbed, the whole system will shake a little, and one has to bring it into a homeostatic state again. For a session to proceed efficiently and without interruption, all the participants need skills, which I will present as learning goals. Using these skills prevents that the client or the user acts upon upcoming material the same way as he would act in everyday life. You know, then why should we take a substance if we react the same way? Then we just repeat the problem on another level. So actually, we have to enter a meta level. So I will explain this to you. By the way, I can tell you concerning the meta level, at the time being, there is a study being conducted in the Psychiatric University Hospital of Zurich, the Burg Hölzli, and they work on psilocybin therapy in depression, but they first had two groups, and one of the group had a 6-week training in awareness training nach Kabat-Zinn. Does anybody know this? Yeah? Or Zinn Kabat-Zinn? Okay. And a very strict training. And in meditation, Zen master is present at these studies. And what they found out is that the sessions of the meditating and awareness people, that the effects of the sessions were much better than those of a normal control group. So by accident, I used to do this for 10 years. So the learning goals for an effective psycholytic work are: just watch without interpreting so immediately, listen without immediately reacting, learning not to react, learning to be still, to enter the still point in your system. Still is not be quiet and tight. Still is really a point within you, which you can reach by being aware or be in the moment. So these are the skills that are necessary for a successful psycholytic session. So it is a meditative state of being. This state is the foundation of what I called beforehand the self-reflecting I, or the observer, the inner observer, which later, when you have really learned not to judge at all, can become the empathic, well-meaning observer, which you then would call a Buddha smile, the inner smile of the Buddha, and you watch with this inner smile. Naturally, this is high school already. And to enter this meditative state enables the client to at the end learn how to guide his own process. As the content of these learning processes become increasingly automatic, it becomes easier on the session to gain deep introspection, and in the end, this became a state of being in life. It transformed to be this person who can watch things like the smiling Buddha, or to just be with what is. Then there is a synergy between attaining these learning goals and the substances. They become more efficient. In other words, you can dose higher, and don't lose the balance and regress more deeply. Or you can dose less and you can reach very high altered states of consciousness with a little dose already. In this way, the sessions become more productive, which makes the therapy itself more intense. And in the end, so what my goal always was, that when we had taken the substance, that at the peak, no one would feel, or no one would have the feeling I'm on a substance. Totally clear, so that you are in this open state of mind, totally balanced, and then we could talk and work, and no one would fall out of balance. Naturally, sometimes heavy processes came that then, when we went through a state of irritation, but at the end, everybody was very clear again. All right. I have compared the learning process of being with a psychoactive substance with a person that comes to a taster course and then goes to primary school, to middle school, to high school, and in the end leaves the university. So when I had clients, each client would first have a single session where he would really get into touch for the very first time with a psychoactive substance, which mostly is overwhelming. So then he would enter the group and then enter primary school. And the primary school pupil learns that there are different substances and that you have to be still and that you can get lost. And the middle school person then learned to self-distinguish between the substances and could say, oh yes, my favorite substance is, so that they learn. And the high school the university leaver at the end could be still with a relatively high dose of LSD or a combination of something and guide the process himself. So one has to really learn to be effective with a psychoactive substance. Now I come to the next, the next chapter. In this way of therapy, or in my concept that I want to tell you, I have a couple of arcs that sort of ran parallel. So the longest arc is the outer one and represents the length of therapy, which naturally was very individual, because as I said before, if you have 6 or 8 sessions a year, then a couple of years are over pretty fast. The next arc then was the weekend. We worked in a weekend setting from Friday evening till Sunday early afternoon in our own house. By the way, there's my husband. He worked with me. Just a second. So, yeah, I got, see, he still irritates me after 25 years. So, on Friday evenings, now we get into the details. Is everything okay? Do I have to hurry? No. Good. On Friday evenings, we would start. People came, we had some food, we first ate. Eating and drinking is always very important. So, but then we sat in a circle, and everyone would report what had happened between the last session, how he had done the things, or what he had achieved in the meantime. And he would then share with us his intention for the next day. And let me say this, like in this parenthesis again, the intention, the role of the intention is to guide the inner view and to guide the unconscious. Still, we work on the premise that the unconscious always brings up the relevant material. So we have an intention. This guides the view. We let go of this intention, and we work with the material that comes up. So this is why. And Ralph Metzner himself said, the more specific the question, the more specific the answer. So Friday evening, we really worked on the intention question. I would then ask and dig what he really meant. So in the end, every person had a very well-formed intention question. So at the end of this evening, we would decide on the substance. Naturally, there always was sort of an issue in the room, and then we would decide on the substance and then talk about the dosages publicly, like in a forum. Naturally, one can do this with a client after 10 to 12 sessions. Before that, they normally say, you decide, so. The next day then was the Saturday, the whole day with the session in the morning and the dinner in the evening. Yeah. So the session, now we start here the session. And we would meet at 9 o'clock sharp. I'm a friend of correct time, since I'm not only German but living in Switzerland. So we started full time 9 o'clock and began with a small ritual. So we would sit in a circle, we would hold hands, we would close our eyes, and I would say, I promise that I will not talk about the substance. We worked underground. Not talk about the substance, about the people here, and the location. I promise not to harm myself or anybody else during or after this session. I promise to get out of this session more wise and more healed. And I take the responsibility for what I do myself here. This didn't mean that I gave up responsibility, but I insisted that everyone knew what he was doing there, because as we saw in the end, it was difficult. Now, then I would address every single person and say, do you agree, dear? And he would say loudly and in front of us all, yes, I agree. Then we would all take the same substance at the same time, inclusive me. And then everybody would lie down on his mat and I would sit down in my chair. And this was the moment then for me to tell everybody, let go of the intention. So we began the ascent phase in the so-called introspective lying setting. That means you have your eyes closed, you lay down, you cover yourself nicely that you don't feel cold, you don't move, you don't talk, you concentrate on your own inner process. And then after 20 minutes, you know that the substance begins to flood in. Then I would accompany this. I would sort of guide it uphill. For example, I would say, just watch, do not react. Or I would say, please breathe slow, or don't breathe loud. You know, when the MDMA is really going on, then people like to... And this disturbed, you know, so I would really say, shh, be silent, so that we really created a stillness in the room. And I would accompany the unfolding of the substance with these words, and exactly in line the 90 minutes with specially chosen pieces of music which accompanied the unfolding. So in the beginning something different than in the end, and very, very touching music on the peak.
Excuse me, you take substance too?
Yes.
As a therapist?
Yes. Yes.
But why?
Why? Because when you are in a totally different state of being, you cannot work with the client. You have to really tune in, or resonant, be in a very good resonance. Naturally, it takes a lot of practice. In the beginning, it was a process too. In the beginning, I didn't take any, and later on, I took half. But people would say to me, you know, you work best when you are just. So. Oh, I made a mistake. Just a second. Was muss ich denn jetzt tun? Just a second, okay? Oh. I pressed the wrong button. Oh, Schreck. Wird ja immer schlimmer.
Nochmal.
Nochmal? Was tun?
Nein, ich glaube, das warst du, oder?
Ja, das war ich. Just a minute. So, vorführen wieder, ja?
Ja. Das halt testen, oder?
It's gone forever.
No.
Where is the wonderful guy that helped me before?
Nevieš, že ktoré tam treba spustiť, že aby to...
Vorführen? Are they here?
Tam.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Oh, dear God, my Albtraum. So, 51. Oh. So, there we are. Okay, yes, I'm back in the swim. When we had reached, I'm sorry, I got out of concept. When we had reached the peak after 90 minutes, it was there, then I would say we've reached the peak, and then I left time for about 15 to 20 minutes to be totally still. Everybody could watch for himself, or if someone dared, he could look what is the combination to my intention question, or what insights did I have, and so on. Meine Güte. Yeah. We then would sit up in a circle again, and then we began what I call the expression-orientated, process-orientated setting part. First we then sat in this circle, and someone would say, oh, I saw this, how I ruin my life by by not doing well things to me, or I harm my partnership by doing this. Or we had a talk about general insights. Sometimes I dared to give a little teaching about philosophical issues or what. And mostly after a while, then someone would raise his hands and say, I would like to work because I'm in this state of being, or I have seen something that I cannot interpret, and so on. And then we would start working with what has come up. Not with the intention question and not with the symptom, but just with the material that had arisen. Now I come, since I had been talking about these little arcs, now I come to the smallest arc of my work. This is the actual work on the session itself, and it's more a meta level about this. Because to show this is difficult. Once in my life I will do a movie like this, maybe. Now, I explain this to you. I refer to the individual units of work as the iterative integration process. So, once again, the client comes to the session, and he comes and he has a particular intention question. Now, when he goes into the session, he drops the intention question, and we work with the material that has come up. It is this material then on the session is worked through as a single process, and the content, as far as possible, is integrated. This unit then becomes a puzzle piece which helps to uncover the client's central theme. Now again, we have here the thing that he doesn't remember, here the symptom. Now, we do not work on the symptom because we know the symptom is just the answer of this. So we take the substance, the unconscious material comes up, we work with it here, we integrate it, so the symptoms diminishes while the central theme shows up slowly. Naturally, we cannot discover the whole central theme within one puzzle piece, but the puzzle pieces come together, and since we have to write it down, I come to this later, we add puzzle piece by puzzle piece and finally get the central issue. Now, sometimes we have been able to see the connection to this, and sometimes we haven't. So, in retrospect, we see that the knowledge gained from one session and the integration steps that follow guide then the inner focus to the next step, to the next intention question.
Sorry, Friederike, could you be
A little slower.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's really structured.
This is, yes.
But it's necessary to get all
Okay,
the steps.
yeah. So you are there? So I do the next
Maybe
sentence slower?
a little rewind.
Rewired? Is that okay? So what you have gotten is the client comes with the intention
Yes,
question.
then he drops.
We drops it, he drops it. And we work with the material that has come up. We work through this process, and we try to integrate it as far as possible. So, and this piece we have worked on the session is a puzzle piece that it has a connection, or that by the time with more puzzle pieces together shows the central theme that has produced the symptom. Got it?
Okay. Obraz, ktorý koreluje alebo má súvis s našim centrálnym symptómom, alebo centrálnym problémom, centrálnou témou.
Stimmt. So, now, retrospectively, you can see that the more puzzle pieces we get together, the more precise the questions become. It's natural, it's logic. Okay. Yeah. Now comes the next thing. Now the path that leads from one intention question to the other is not linear, but it is a circle, and the circle is not closed.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and this is why I call it iterative. Yeah, you understand, right? Yeah. And the inner picture I have with that is that when you are sitting on a horse, you always do this same movement, whereas the horse goes like this, you know? So we always do the same. The next process, which is not totally completed because the issue is not totally discovered. And so we move on with the process, the symptom gets less, the central theme shows more, and finally it's over. Yeah? So this is why I call it iteration. And this iteration put into a philosophical sentence is the destination is the goal. Der Weg ist das Ziel.
Ja,
It's the embodiment of this sentence. That's the route is the destination, as to say. One could name it this way. All right?
Yeah, thank you.
So this individual working is actually what distinguishes me from other therapists. I do not say that it is better and not worse, but different. There are many other psycholytic therapists, and in the studies too, one is discussing this matter, if it is good to intervene or if it is not so good, if you remain in the silent lying setting or if you intervene like I did. So it's to be discussed. I decided to do this out of 3 reasons. First, I got stuck myself quite often, and I didn't know for years that I was hopelessly dissociated until I found out. So I learned to intervene in this. Secondly, if a client is, you can be re-traumatized if you keep on lying down there. Because then your concept is proven all over again. No one loves me, no one takes care of me, I have to do all of myself alone, and so on. Secondly, when I started working, I was called very often to the mat of a person, and then I would talk to this person, and we would work, and the neighbor was disturbed. So then we always had this discussion, you talked all the time, it disturbed me. So finally, when someone called me to resolve a problem with him, I would say, everybody sits up, please. Then we worked through this process, and all of a sudden I found many processes were going on actively, and people really needed each other and needed me. So this was the second. And the third was that in the sharing the day after, I very often found I said, oh, why didn't we do this right away when it happened to you? So then we had to work it all over again, and the sharing took until 5 p.m. on Sunday. Hard work. So I decided that we first do the introspective lying setting, then a little rest, and then do the express-orientated, process-orientated sharing. And we, in mean times when we had to go down again, we would lay down again for 5 to 10 minutes and listen to a piece of music. And then I said, who wants to work next? And people sometimes would say, I want to work after the music or so. This is why I do this. Naturally, one can discuss this, because there are others who say it shall only be the single process. I have gone through these settings too. I have survived them, but I have done it the way I did. Yes. Now, to work efficiently, the therapist needs tools. And this is now about the time to present my tools to you as they have developed over time. Please understand that nothing has been like this from the very beginning. It was all a process, and I would say the process had developed 2005, 2006. It was the way I then perceived, went on doing it like that. So. The first tool is the substance. So I've talked about the substance already, and the tool of the substance is that you not only do the right dosage, but you use the right substance for the intention in the room. So if we had lots of resistance to work with, we would take 2CB. You can combine 2CB with LSD, because the descent of 2CB is annoying. So annoying.
What is
Annoying. The descent of 2CB. Mm-hmm. So and it is a very short substance. So I find myself talking about 2CB, but don't worry.
Let me ask you one question about 2CB shortly. I've read that the 2CB have in some degree opposite
Ask John.
Opposite effect to LSD, yes. I mean, LSD makes ego dissolution, and 2CB makes ego strengthening like amphetamines.
No. 2CB shows you the structure of your resistance, and it is perfect on that. It's, and 2CB leads you where you're ready to go. So if you're ready for really to let go of fear, it feels like MDMA. If it has a mescaline side, it's not too harsh, not so like LSD, like so sharp in the mind. It's more like the mescaline. Yeah, but it can be very annoying. You're right with it.
What's 2CB?
2CB. Don't ask me for the chemical thing. Please don't.
CB,
A čo to je? To sú
Psychedelic.
Ask the.
Wikipedia.
Yeah. 2CB, yeah. So then we would decide, do we take MDMA? So you have to choose the substance and then do the right fine-tuning dose.
Can I ask, what is the criteria? How do you choose?
When we have been a group of 16 people, and after a while we met regularly together. So we sort of had issues in the room. And naturally, when we were 16 people, we would have to take care of the fact that we had to spend a whole day. So we had to sort of lengthen it. So this now, yes. Naturally, the individual dose is different,
Yeah, but if you decide to choose MDMA, then everybody...
Yes. Otherwise, the energy in the room is so different, it's no good. Now, the second tool is a therapist. In this role, I go, as you may have heard, in resonance. And I think this is one of the most important things, to be in resonance with a person. I even try to do this in normal, conventional therapy. As in this role, I support, I guide him through his own process. I ask, I confront, I mirror. I do practically everything that I do in other therapy. And in this context, I may even have to hold him or do body work with him. The third tool is the group. So we were around, as I said, 16 people in the room, and a group represents not only the mother, but the world, as you may certainly know, and in the world with all its possible pathways of projection. So this context allowed to observe, express, and correct the personal pathology of their projection pathways. This was one thing. Then we talked.
May I ask, how did you choose the people? Were they completely okay and normal?
Maybe you ask me this later, because this would lead me then away from the tool.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
So as a group, we talked about many general things. The members of the group would be observers of the process of the other person that I worked with. And in this way, very often it happened when I worked, for example, with a woman and she worked on her father. Others in the group had the same issue. So then the side effect would be that they sort of solved their issue at this very time too. The members of the group helped with the constellation work, which I explain later. They helped with the body work. Sometimes they were so used that they would say, "You know something? What are you doing there?" And he would sit in front of him and say, "I'm your mother now. What are you doing here?" You know. So they would be part of the therapeutic process after a while, since we knew each other so well. Naturally, so this was sort of a give and take. But naturally, it was not always easy. We had really difficult times. We had to clear relationships. We had couples that came. Some stayed together. Some divorced. So it really were some processes, you may believe. But one thing is, we never fought. We were able to sit together when we were really discussing things. So this was the group. One word to sexuality. It was an unwritten law to stay abstinent over these weekends, because I'm old enough. I don't have to solve this problem anymore. So, and I don't want to have the trouble, So the fourth tool is the modified constellation work. I'm educated in systemic constellation work too, and so I sort of modified it. We remained sitting, the client remained in his position. One of the group was the protagonist, and I took only little aspects. I didn't put on a whole family thing. I did little aspects like mother and son, and we worked directly on the emotional relationship of those two. Naturally, sometimes we did sort of a constellation too when we wanted to look through hidden family dynamics, or if we were in the epigenetic field of grandfather, great-grandfather, or the war, or all these things. So this was another tool, the modified constellation work. The fifth tool is live body work. This is an element of Stan Groff's holotropic breathwork things, and we did this when experiences with very much body movements came out. For example, when you relive your birth, then people got really in a struggle. The lack of oxygen in the birth process is really relived, and they suffer from this horrible lack of oxygen. And so when we wanted to work through this, for example, I give an example here, we would cover the client with blankets, and some would do the uterus, and then this client had to press himself out there, and I would sort of guide him. He heard me with the self-reflecting eye. He had to keep in contact with me, and on the other hand, he had to get himself into his very own process of nearly suffocating, which drove him almost crazy. So when he went through this process, he very often had the feeling, people had the feeling, I breathed for the first time, and now they were totally clear on a high dosage of LSD. Here I am. I'm born. Like this. What is the idea behind this? We did this naturally with traumata too. And the idea behind this is to disconnect the emotions from the happening. But naturally, before we can disconnect them, we have to connect them, especially when people are dissociated. So I give you an example of a dissociated person. One woman saw in her experience that her brother, who was about 7 years older than she was, had tried to kill her when she was about 10 months old, and had put a pillow on her head. So in one MDMA sessions, she saw that, and about 2 sessions later, she said that she wanted to dare to look at this. So we took LSD, and under LSD we
Instantly.
Yeah. We did this. Yeah, installed. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Instantly.
Yeah. So we did that, and so the idea behind this was to get her after this state of being frozen to get connected with the feelings that had been cut off by this freezing. And she really, we pressed, and naturally we held a little for her to breathe, but she, with her emotions and her being open under the LSD, she could enter this state and connect to the struggling she must have had and the screaming. So finally she screamed and she moved, and this was the moment she reconnected to the true feelings that were when the brother did this. And it really made the difference. So this is the intention behind this. Cut the feelings from the event and the body sensation, naturally, because they are stored in the body, as I said before. So, oh, I'm sorry, this was the blanket thing. I'm sorry, I was so... Now, the sixth and last tool is the music. Just a second. Music touches us directly. It doesn't take the cortex, and it immediately induces feelings and triggers memories. This is one thing. And it functions like a handrail. When you are attached to your thoughts and to pictures and got someplace lost, it sort of guides you back and brings you again. And I would then say, just listen to the music, cling on to the notes, and then people got away from their difficult states of being. To a certain extent, music brings together inner and outer states. Like you all may know, that when you take a substance, like after 40 to 50 minutes, you are sometimes in a horrible state of, awful. And then I would play very dissonant music, or Terje Rupdahl. Does anybody know music of Terje Rupdahl? He plays the electric guitar. Ooh. And then I play this music, which really sort of makes you feel uneasy, and when it then dissolves, the harmony right goes into you, and the process is over. You are over the process. So you do this. Music with words sort of leads the client. I liked, especially with beginners, I liked pieces with words on the peak. You can bring beautiful love songs at the peak. I remember the very first song I ever heard in the training, and it was Betty Midler, Some Say Love is Like a Razor. And then I knew that the words on the peak are very important. With advanced people, I would play music without words, but with very melodious, simple music on MDMA, and more of a pompous, little pompous music on the peak of LSD. So, as I said, music, the music naturally is different between the substances. As I just said, the music that one plays on LSD is not very suitable for music on MDMA. In the essence, it's okay. I do not ever play, since you are also young, I say this out of text, I never played hard rock or something like this. It's too heavy, not that I don't like it, but it really is too heavy, then the processes become so wild inside, I played music mostly at the ascent. On the plateau, as I said before, we played music once in a while so that we could calm down after a long process, or if a process was finished up, like we had worked quite a bit on a dead father, then I would play a farewell song for the father, so that the feeling would deepen, and then we could let go of this issue. So again, the tools became refined with regular using, and their use became more efficient, so which in turn made the therapy again more intensive. Working with tools and the introspection that happens all the time, not only in the ascent phase, lead to what I call corrective new experiences. Now you all know that an experience needs an emotional component and a cognitive component put together at the same time. Otherwise, no experiences. And if there is no experience, there's no change. If this would be different, then the how-to-do books would work, you know. They don't, because they don't have this experiencing thing in it. So the corrective new experiences can be the insights, like the aha, or it can be a correction of the view, that all of a sudden a person who really had a difficult time and no contact with the mother came to an experience where she remembered how well, how lovely there were moments with his mother, or that she could understand the attitude of the mother as an attitude of love. So these are corrections, and this is the result of these sessions. Now, observed over time, the individual processes showed, that, although they were very, very different, that each client went through a long series during his process, and that there were like stations on the road which can be generalized. Naturally, the sequence of the stations were different, or the length of time a person would stay there. So let me talk about these stations. A client comes with this initial problem, and be sure, in the first 2 sessions, he will see the connection to this initial problem with his biography. There we are with father and mother. So mostly people started out with really investigating, feeling, correcting the relationship to father and mother. And this mostly led to that the view fell on the grandparents, the great-grandparents, their fate, their biography, and their naturally then, with looking at the ancestors, we had to include the general happenings like war, like famine, like being a refugee. And believe me, in the years around 2 or 3, we had in the room children of Nazis, children of Jews that had survived. We had people that came from the resistance. We had different origins in the room, and we really had to work on the impact that these happenings had on us through our ancestors. And we really had to connect to each other on this human base. Since we are here a small group, I can sort of do some philosophy about it. So my father was very young when he went to war, but he, when I looked at his uniform, he had Totenkopf, what is it?
Skull.
A skull here. So he must have been somehow active there. And I was the therapist from a woman, she had lost 20 relatives in Auschwitz. So can you imagine what we had to do together? And we could grieve together about what had happened, and the loss of a son of a Nazi mother and the loss of a son of a Jewish mother is the loss of a son through, the mother loses a child. And we could really end up on this level. So there we were on the epigenetic field. We were able to look at psychosomatic symptoms. We could understand how they had evolved, what their meaning was, and if possible, sometimes we could even, if they hadn't yet created a morphologic correlate, we could sort of heal them. It's not very easy, but it is possible.
What do you mean by morphologic correlate?
If you, for example, have asthma, because you have this tight relationship with your mother, after a while the organ changes itself, so then you can't redo it by psychology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is a morphologisches Korrelat.
Yeah.
Okay. As things progressed, the more we learned to widen our consciousness, and the more often we did this, and we went deeper into the origin of the human being. So at the end, we ended up on the cell level, in the uterine or in the perinatal level, and some really could work out the impact, the stress of the mother had on their concepts of life, or the having survived and try to abort. Is that when the mother has tried to abort the child, then this has an impact on the concepts of life, and we could detect these things. Last but not least, one should not forget the spiritual experiences and the mystical experiences that happen. And these really are without words to be described, how they heal and how they change a person from deep down. So these I named the last to be on the way. Now, you will all agree with me that the most important thing in therapy, in conventional therapy and in psycholytic therapy, is the integration. So the first step of an integration is a process, and this process has steps, and each step is necessary. So the first integration step was the work itself on the session. The second was the sharing on Sunday morning. After the session on Sunday evening, we had dinner, and we who wanted to could walk with my husband, take a good long walk. I went to the sauna or did the kitchen. And then on Sunday morning after breakfast, we had a long sharing round, and there we would put the experience on the meta level. We talked about it, had to put it really into words to describe it, and if necessary, we finished some work. The third integration step was to write a journal, and the journal actually was the entrance to the next session. Because this is really an important thing. The fourth step was a session in between the psycholytic sessions. Very advanced people didn't have to do that. And the last and fifth step, which actually never really will be ending, is the integration into everyday life, where you have to try out, to dare, to exercise all the things you have seen that you may do new, where the new view of that you might have gained can start to be materialized through actions or reactions, and the old patterns come back again, so one has to really do it over and over again. So the sessions themselves produced results, so to speak, and all these results, as I indicated before, were puzzle pieces, and we put the puzzle pieces together until we had the whole piece, and when the symptom had gone and the person had changed, then we had a result. As a matter of fact, most people came with a problem, but they wouldn't stop coming when the problem was solved. So they would stay and then dig deeper and deeper into their personality. This is why the question you are going to ask is one thing, and the remaining of the clients is another thing. So, as I said, it is the nature of therapy to induce changes. And I would say that we got a lot of changes, especially, and for me always it was very touching to see how slowly but constantly the people became more authentic. They changed their attitude towards themselves and the world by the insights. Let me just see. In the best cases, yes, it's the right folio, the client was able to move closer to his authentic personality. This mostly was after he had solved the problem, to the next step to achieve, to say, who am I really? Because in my opinion, the question, who am I, where do I come from, and where do I go, are the three most important questions people have. So after problem solving, mostly this question was, I want to really become me. Naturally, this state is never to be completed. It's not a static thing that you can say, now here I am, I'm the authentic personality. It is a state of being in which a person is in harmony with itself, where the person can do whatever he wants. He does it with his wholeheartedness, where this person knows I am developing and I will be developing will be a developing human being as long as I live. So, and who knows, we cannot change the things, we cannot change the events that had happened, but we can change our interpretation, we can change our view, and we can change our attitude towards the whole thing. So this is actually the same in the session where we would end with the Buddha smile on the peak, and we can be in life in the authentic personality with the ability to say it is what it is. So now I have told you how psycholytic therapy can be done, or did I do, and I told you some about the outcomes. Now a very short look on where do we go from here. So future, I cannot say much about the future, but there is a huge number of studies around the world, what I said before, and that these substances are finally, at least one has the idea that they finally go back into the direction of psychotherapy. That makes me very happy. As you may know, that the pharma research has stopped researching antidepressants because they don't work or don't work enough and they don't bring enough money. the call for new substances, new sustaining or sustainable substances is going loud. And I want to spread the word that we know that ketamine and psilocybin is really quickly working against depression. We know that ayahuasca and ibogaine has long-lasting effect in therapy of addictions, and the MDMA is already used in the United States with quite good results in the post-traumatic stress disorders with the veterans. Ralph Metzner, by the way, told that the veterans are creating self-help groups by using MDMA because they don't have enough therapists. So the word has spread. In my opinion, I leave it. I leave it. We know that, do we? I'm sorry. Yeah, so, in my opinion, it is imperative that we stop putting all psychoactive substances in one pot and call them dangerous drugs. I think it is necessary to characterize them by their real effect, by their real danger. And I again refer to the drug ranking of Professor Nutt. He has done this. Does anybody know this? It is N-U-T-T, Nutt, and drug ranking. You look it up. He took 20 drugs and he researched them in respect to different aspects. And one very easy to read statistics is about the harm to oneself and the harm to others. He has other criterions, but this is one of the most. And the most dangerous drug is the alcohol. Yeah, and then comes heroin and crack, and then comes the benzos, and the psilocybin is on the 20th thing without any harm to others, and the LSD and the MDMA is, I think, on number 18 or 17. So this is what we are talking about. And I think this is necessary to spread the word. Maybe it can become a political thing that this is seen. And I still, I wanted not to say anything naughty, so I have to watch it, but I sometimes dream that all people would go on the street and say, I have used drugs, put me in jail. You know, then, like, remember years ago in Germany, there was this woman, Alice Schwarzer, and she wrote, I think, an article about, I have done an abortion. And all of a sudden, thousands of women, and it was a political thing because the law that doing abortion is criminal was going to be tightened again, you know. So all these women went on the street and they say, I have aborted too, and since then it's legal. So maybe, you know. So classifying them according to the effect and actual risk. I vote for a consciousness about consciousness and for a consciousness about a widened consciousness. And I ask the question, what if we were allowed to decide for ourselves in what state of consciousness we want to be in? I don't give the answer because I think that we are allowed to close our consciousness with alcohol and that doctors are allowed to prescribe medication that totally diseases you, like the benzodiazepines. And they are very addictive. So why shouldn't we be allowed to open up our consciousness on our own responsibility? So, very last sentence. Despite everything, I am very optimistic, and Rick Dublin, the founder of MAPS, talks about 2020 that these substances will be in the therapeutic use again. So, therefore, if you want to get to know more, you can Google maps.org, and there you can Google yourself through, and you find every single study on Earth down here. Maps.org. And I thank you for your attention. And yes, if there are questions, I'm willing to answer them. If I can't answer them, I tell you. And if I don't want to answer them, I'll let you know too. Thank you. Loud here. Loud. Speak in here. Oh, don't ask me if I do any therapy. No. If I have any substance with me. No. If I educate people. No. Not anymore. I'm going to be 70 next year. I want to write a new book. I have to do some studies myself too. So, but you can ask me any other question. But there are people that know and that do.
I have a question. Do you smoke weed during the therapy?
No. Konrad, das heißt, ich vertrage das nicht.
It doesn't do good to me.
I get sick from it. I can't smoke these things. I'm a cigarette smoker. With others in shamanic sessions, people do. They do smoke like tobacco with the ayahuasca. You know?
But tobacco, no.
Tobacco,
marijuana.
not marijuana, no. So I didn't do that. But please.
There are actually many opinions about why LSD was
Banned.
forbidden and prohibited.
Yes.
And actually, I think a common one which states what it was mostly dangerous for governments and states.
Yes.
So I would like to hear your own opinion about this.
Yes, Albert Hoffmann, as a matter of fact, the LSD was forbidden by political reasons. The young people like you, this age around and younger, would use LSD and then find out that they would rather make peace and love and not war. What you can do about this is try to read and find literature about what the CIA, how the CIA has done research with LSD. It's one of the most interesting things. They really wanted to use the LSD to find out the truth. Then they wanted to spy. They wanted to make people really aggressive. Instead, they all dropped their guns, and went. And then there is something that a certain Dr. Passy talks about. He talks about the long-term effects on LSD, that these things change the attitude, that there are some things that you cannot do anymore. So people will not go to war anymore without saying, no, we don't, So the aggression gets less, and this is politically not wanted. So it's tell you, it's a political decision. It has been a political decision to put LSD away. And the other states, and there was, wer war der Präsident zu der Zeit? Nixon. He called LSD the enemy number one in the, So, and then the other states followed. Switzerland did it from the green table. None of the substances is banned because it's so horrible. Not because of the substance, but because of the consequences that use of the substance has. And you should read the book from Professor Nutt. It is called Drugs Without the Hot Air. There you find really, it's from 2015, so very brisant. And he gives statistics on how the newspapers present, in Switzerland we have the Alps. 100 people a year die in the Alps, and not one person of LSD. So why we should illegalize the Alps, I always say. And Professor Nuts puts these things apart, and it's a very, very good, very well written.
Don't you think something changed now, or it's still the same?
There I have, maybe you can understand this. It's not too easy for me to answer. I personally do think that the psychoactive substance, first, are all put in one pot. Secondly, I do think that politics and drugs are so horribly connected that none of us looks through. I'm afraid, Professor Nutt, by the way, says the same, that if we would legalize the drugs, the criminals would have to find other fields to make money. And what I don't know, because I'm not political at all, but I'm afraid that politics and not allowing drugs is very close together. And not to forget about criminal associations, So I really have no idea how we can get these things sorted apart. No idea. Because I'm afraid when the drugs get legalized, we have the criminal thing on the other thing, and there will be groups that will not allow that they will be legalized because they make their profit out of them. I cannot answer them. So, an easy one.
I have two easy. If LSD and MDMA were completely legal, would you, in any case, prefer holotropic breathwork?
Yeah.
When?
In the beginning. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, he asked whether I would, when MDMA would be legalized, whether I still would start with holotropic breathwork. And I would. I have over 20 years I have offered holotropic breathwork, and I have seen enormous processes with it. It is slowly, it can be stopped, you don't have to, it's shorter. So it really works well, and for some people it's totally enough.
Excuse me, there was one more question. She asked if you don't think that using the substances in a therapy isn't the kind of violent way to get to the subconscious material. If maybe the meditation would be more natural.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is kind of not like a violation of the own psyche.
This leads to the question that the young lady in front of me has asked. So how did I choose? It actually is a question of how do I choose these? And if you look at the...
Any people with personal disorders?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Chcem ťa zasekávať, ale...
Yeah. As I said, it's not for everybody. And I think one must have the real urge, because it is hard work. And sometimes it is brutal what you see. So with the holotropic breath work, you always have the totally conscious mind with it, and then you can talk with the person on this rational level and say, okay, we stop the process and let's go. But once you are on, the person really must say, I want to see it. I want to do that. And other people wouldn't come to me. Whoever comes to me, he really has to want something. I would not take a person who would say, oh, I would like to try this too. Not in my whole life. if they really wanted to dig within their own, or they would say, I have a trauma, I know, and I want to see it. Okay, fine. But not for fun and not for leisure time or something.
Also man muss nicht zweifeln. Also daran.
Woran?
Dass man das will.
No, with no doubt, I want.
Okay.
You know, if people, has any of you ever taken ayahuasca?
Yeah.
See, if you take ayahuasca, you really have to want it, you know, because it's unbelievable, you know. To swallow it down, you really have to want something, you know.
Ganz praktische Frage. Haben Sie dann die Substanzen ganz reine gehabt? Oder haben Sie das auch im Schmerzfall?
Nein.
Mali ste čisté substancie, alebo ste si to niekde z čierneho trhu zadovážili?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I tell you what. First,
Next question.
When I started out to do this in the very, very late 90s, for some reason, I had a guy in the United States sent me the stuff. There at that time, you could buy therapeutical quality. There was street quality and therapeutical quality. It was somewhat more expensive. And I was like this animal that puts the things in his the hamster. What is it called? You know, I collected. So, you know, I had good quality, and with the with the LSD, you can't stretch LSD. LSD is LSD or not. If you buy something and then you try it and it's weak and he said it's lot, you know, then you have to find out how much it is. I've tried everything first. When I got something, I sat down and I tried it. But I always bought large quantities so that I didn't have to try so often. Once I can, since we are among us, once I bought mescaline I wanted to do, and obviously I had bought baking powder or something. As a matter of fact, we sat there and waited for hours, you know. Nothing happened. So, it was a little awkward. Yes, please.
First of all, thank you all very much because it was very, very interesting. And my question is quite short. If LSD is love,
If LSD
is love, and fear is opposite to it.
fear is opposite
Have
of
you
it.
ever faced in your practice that people in LSD would feel fear or paranoia? Or do you think that if they feel it, it's a complete counter, that they should not take it? Like you
No.
mentioned, like it-
No. You can. I give a relatively long answer to this in a YouTube that is available from me from the last conference, from Breaking Convention. There I talk about the bad trip, and in this talk I explain why we in psycholytic therapy need the difficult experiences in life to work them through. So we want them to enter these fearful states, then hold them and work through them, you know. So we are waiting for those to come because they make the glasses that the person has on, you know.
Can you guys finish the story about the girl that had a brother that tried to kill her?
Yes. Oh, how
You finished that you role played?
Yes.
How
Yeah.
he tried to kill her and that she felt connected?
Yeah. So we pressed one guy pressed the cushion on her face, naturally with a little space here to breathe, you know. And I would always keep in contact with her. You hear me? And we had agreed that she would like move her hand because she couldn't talk, you know. So she would. He pressed, and I asked her, "Can you hear me? I'm still there." And then it was a moment when he really pressed it down, and then she started moving. And then we got it, and she screamed. And then I held her, you know, look into my eyes. You're here. It's over. Look into my eyes. Breathe, 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 and so on. So we catch the moment now and tell her conscious and open unconscious mind that the thing is over. Because that's the real thing. The cognition that the moment of the fear is over. And the freezing is over too.
You used the term dissociated place. Sometimes, could you explain it? What you mean by that?
Yes. A dissociative place is a place where you do not feel, where you, some people even do not feel their bodies. When they're in a real dissociated place, you can pinch someone and he feels nothing. And if you take a psychoactive substance and you take quite a bit and you do not feel anything, then probably you are in such a place. And I have seen it in ayahuasca sessions in Brazil, that people took ayahuasca and they didn't feel anything, and they said nothing happens, you know. They took a booster, and then whoosh, they go far beyond the event. But in a dissociated place, even without a substance, people very often, while you talk to them or something difficult comes up, it makes a little shift, and oops, they don't hear you anymore. Or they sit there, they look at you, and you know, and then you say something else and they are out again. So on a session, especially with 2CB, one could this work out pretty much, because there is the dissociation is sort of a resistance too. It seems to us like a resistance from the outside, you know. Please, thank you. Was that good?
I'm interested if you ever tried to use psycholytic therapy in treatment of psychotic people. I know you... No. It's a contraindication. I wouldn't dare, you know. And what are the contraindications?
Yes, see, the thing is that when you go into neuroimaging, when you work with LSD, then or with psychoactive substance, naturally each of this is in its idiosyncratic way, then you see that, for example, the LSD connects parts of the brain that are normally not connected. So in a way, there is a disintegration and a disintegration. And in a psychosis, these things are different too. So if we try to figure out what does LSD to the healthy brain, I would not administer LSD to an unhealthy brain, which is already sort of disconnected. So, you know, let's do this in 50 years. Stan Grof would probably say that they then would get sane, but I don't dare, you know.
Because amplification sometimes makes the opposite. No?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, this is why I'm answering this. It is possible, but I wouldn't dare, you know.
And why other question, why is it, you said before that you are waiting for bad trip sometimes because...
For the contents, what could be a bad trip.
Yeah.
For the emotionally difficult contents.
Yes. And if so, in other words, you are waiting for bad trip. With a patient.
Yes, I'm waiting for the traumatic event or for the repressed material.
Okay, why is it then important to have good set and setting? If a good set and setting makes good trip?
No, quite the opposite. A good setting allows a horrible experience to show up and we can work it through.
Allow integration.
Yeah, allow integration of this. We are really waiting for the most horrible thing, a near-death experience, or a near drowning in a controlled setting can be resolved in its results on the psyche. That's an important question. I hope you understood what I meant.
Can I ask?
Loud.
How were you working with your counter-transferences in your interactions when you were doing psychotherapy? When you were on substances, you said that you were tuning.
Yes.
Were you able to work also with your material, because sometimes it arises?
No. Yeah, I know what you mean. I was asked this quite often. You see, when I work with clients, for some reason my stuff doesn't come up. But my beloved husband and I, we have had so much self-experiences on our own. And I went to other places where I would work through my stuff. Yeah? And when I was in charge of these 18 people, in the room, nothing of myself would come up. Nothing.
So you were like in a helper's mode?
Not a helper. I was more, no, I'm not a helper. A facilitator, yes.
May I ask you, I've heard that after taking LSD, the effects of the trip can come back to you in years. Did it ever happen to you that out of a sudden you can tell?
No. No, you are talking about flashbacks, right?
Yeah, flashbacks. Right.
The word flashback is finally disembarked out of the substances, but I have had horrible flashbacks after my arrest, after a real trauma. There you have flashbacks. When you go through a very good session with integrating the difficult things, no flashback.
And did you ever hear of anybody having this?
No.
So it's possibly made up, yeah?
Yes, it is especially made up by the media, the flashback. What I can say you though is, if you, for example, Stan Grof describes this in his book LSD Psychotherapy, by the way, too, I think. When you, a person has a horror trip, and he says, oh, I want to get out of it, so you give him a benzo, Valium, yeah? Then Stan says, the moment the Valium wears off, the trip goes on. So then people stay for years on Valium because the rest of the trip is still waiting to show up. So then Stan Grof says, use the same substance and go through again, and then it's over. I have never had this because we have worked sometimes until 1 at night, until everybody had closed the gestalt.
Oh, it's because the benzodiazepines worsen the dissociation.
Yeah. They put everything.
Potentiate dissociation.
Yeah, yeah. Please.
How would you describe the difference between process and effect of ayahuasca and LSD?
Kannst du mir mal eben, which difference of?
Ayahuasca and the process.
The process. Okay. I can only talk about myself, okay? For me, the ayahuasca is much more on the body, first. Secondly, I cannot go well with the harmaline in it. It makes me sick. So I spit up like hell. But naturally, so actually, you are asking about the difference about LSD and DMT, right? The DMT for me is clearer. That's true. The insights are very clearer, and the logic things I can work through are much deeper. So if it were, as for me, if I could get the DMT pure, I would probably prefer the DMT to the LSD. So.
But indigenous approach is when you don't vomit, you are not treating yourself, you are not having cure.
Yeah.
There is no.
The guy I go to in Brazil has now an ayahuasca where you don't vomit. Because it's not so wonderful to vomit. One really vomits because of the harmaline component.
Different approach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different concept.
Yeah. The concept in them is really animalistic, where you go with nature and go only with the process, whereas my approach is more therapeutical, Western style.
Western style.
So if I go there, I go there.
I wanted to ask you, is it possible to kind of cure fears, fear of dogs, or fear of dying, or fear of disease through the use of these substances? Kind of rewire the brain?
Yes.
Rewire the connection?
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, a study has been conducted with Peter Gasser in Switzerland, and he has redone Stan Groff's work, who has given LSD to terminally ill patients, and they really lost their fear of dying. And I myself have survived in the sessions a couple of near-death experiences, and I'm not afraid of dying anymore either. And in the study you can read on maps.org from Peter Gasser, Switzerland, LSD on terminally ill patients. And the change of in life towards life and death is amazing, really. Nicht mehr allzu lange, ich werde ein bisschen müde.
Okay.
Please, some more questions, and then I'm.
Really quick, what was the maximum amount you were given of LSD here?
Of LSD, in the group, the most was 350, and we did some single sessions, especially Conrad and I, up to 500. But then I have had it. Yeah.
What would be your thinking process for choosing a substance with someone? So 2CB, psilocybin, LSD.
I see. Well, did you get the question? What?
Proces pri rozmýšľaní pri výbere, že 2CB, psilocybin, LSD, MDMA.
Okay, I answered to this. Please say it loud, so that the.
Môžeš to, prosím.
He was asking what the process of choosing substances is. Let me tell you, if you have a pure beginner, a person who has never taken anything, and I have had a couple of those, because to me people came who had, I was the 5th and 6th therapist, and I worked on this epigenetic stuff, which pretty soon spread the word. So people came to me quite old, like in their 40s, and they had never had anything. So I would always start with MDMA. Always. There is even a book written on that, how to do that. One starts out with MDMA, then you give a tiny little bit of LSD to it. The next time you give 50 micrograms of LSD, and then he may sit on this for 6 to 8 hours, a person. And then you can slowly add a little, if you have 2CB to it, and and then you give a full dose of MDMA again, and then you do a little more LSD, and then you combine it again. So build it up so that the person can learn how to be with it. I would even do this in a recreational thing, although I never took anything recreational, but. I would always dose it up, because what is the sense of putting in too much and then you can't grasp where you are. You know, looking at nature in a full state of balance is unbelievable, you know.
Posledná otázka.
No, možno. Recently
Sorry, môžeme dať niekomu, že kto ešte nemal otázku? Nech sa páči.
I want to ask you, do you have any experience with psychopharmacs comparing to substances that you use in your practice? Like, it's pretty obvious that a lot of clients go to psychotherapy and use antidepressants.
Yeah. This young lady asked me about my experiences in normal psychopharmacy. Yeah. Yes. There are some people that one can really